Hello, welcome back to Bite-Sized Coding Time with the Port Moody Public Library. Today we're going to talk about how to create a timer in Scratch. Now there are times when we need to keep track of how much time has gone by. For example, you want to know, well, how long does it take for a player to finish a level? Maybe if they finish faster, then they get a bigger time bonus. Or you want to throw your player into a maze and you say, well, you have 30 seconds to get out of that maze and see if they can do it before the time runs out. In both cases, we need to figure a way to keep track of the time that has gone by. So let's see how we can create this timer in Scratch. Now I have started a project here and I've done nothing except chosen a sprite, which is an owl, because everything needs an owl. And so I need to create a timer. Now, do you remember a couple weeks ago we talked about this magical thing that helps us keep track of numbers that changes throughout our game? For example, points or lives or score or health. Do you remember what that thing is? That's right, it is a variable. We need a variable and we're going to use a variable today to keep track of our time because the number also changes, right? Time changes. So let's take a look. So we're going to go into our variable and create one. So go to the left-hand side and you can see that there's the orange dot here that says variable. So let's click on that. And the first option here is to create a new variable. So let's do that. So I'm going to click on this and I am going to give it a name, timer, and I'm going to say OK. Now, once you create a variable, you know that it will show up on your preview screen, and you can see that there's a timer variable right there. And that's take up a little bit of room in your game. So if you don't want it to show up, you can make it invisible and hide it for the time being. So if you want to do that, take a look at the blocks on the left-hand side, and what you want to do is to click on the check mark. Right now it's check, which means it's shown, and if you click on to uncheck it, then it's going to hide that variable. So you can see now this is gone from your screen, but I'm going to keep it checked for now because we want to watch it in action. So now we have created a variable. Now we need to add some code to make this timer works. So every project often begins with when the green flag is clicked. So let's go to our our events block, and we're going to drag this green flag up here. So when the green flag is clicked, the first thing you want to do is to reset the timer, right? Because in my game right now, we're going to do a game where we keep track of how much time has gone by. So every second that goes on, the timer should increase and gets bigger and bigger. So, but when it first started, there's no time has gone by yet. So that means the timer should be 0. And I want to make sure that every time my game starts, it always starts from 0. So to do that, we have to go back to our variables block, which is the orange one again. And then what we need is this block here called set my variable to something, right? And you want to make sure that you change this in the drop down to timer, because that is the variable that we just created and that's the one we want to change. And we're going to set it right now to 0 because when the game starts, no time has gone by yet, so it is 0. But as the game goes on, every second goes by, we want to make sure the timer increases because it's going to count how many seconds it takes. So if we want the game to keep doing that forever and ever, we will need a forever sandwich. So to find the forever sandwich, you want to go into control, and there's our favorite forever sandwich. Okay, and inside the forever sandwich, we need to tell the game to say every second that goes by, add 1 to the timer. So the timer will show 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and so on and so forth. So we have to make sure it wait a second, like in real time, before it does that. So let's go to control again, and we're going to grab the first block. They say wait 1 second. So 1 second has gone by. Now add 1 to our timer. So going back to the variables block, there is change the timer variable. So remember, make sure you change this to timer by 1. And what it's telling the project to do right now is that when the game first starts, make sure it's always start from 0. And then forever and ever, every time a second goes by, you make the timer go up by 1. So if it is 0 right now, a second gone by, it's going to become 1. It's 1 now, the timer is equal to 1. Another second gone by, and now it's 1 plus 1, which is 2. Timer equals 0. Another second has gone by. Now it's 2 plus 1 equals 3. And it will keep increasing because it's in a forever sandwich, so we'll not stop. So let's see if that works or not. Now, we always say, once you have a little bit of code, test it out. Test it out before you keep going, because sometimes if you add a lot of code and then you test, and if something goes wrong or it doesn't work the way you think it should, now you have this long giant list of code to check and see where your error is. And that just takes a little bit longer. But if you test it out bit by bit, then you know, well, this bit is fine. So it must be something here that didn't quite work. And it just makes it easier for you to find where and pinpoint where it is that the problem is. So let's test out our code. So I'm going to click on the green flag right here. And you can see our timer goes from 0, goes to 1, goes to 2, goes to 3, and so on, right? If I stop it and if I click on the green flag right now, remember the first thing it's going to do is to set the timer to 0. So it should start again at 0. So let's make sure it does that. 0, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. All right. So that is a timer when you want the timer to go up. But what if we want it the opposite way? We want it to count down, right? Remember we talked about our maze example right now. We want to have 30 seconds and then it counts down to 29, 28, 27 until it reaches 0. And then if the person is still stuck in the maze, game over, right? So that's what we're going to do. So the two things we need to change if we want to do countdown, okay? In this code, what are the two things you think we should change? Well, the first one is up here, right? Because we're not starting at 0 this time. We're going to start at 30, right? So we need to give this number, change it to 30. Now, I'm not going to do 30 in our example because I don't want to have to wait 30 seconds every single time. So let's make it 5 so we can actually watch this timer goes down and count down. So that's the first thing. So that's good. So it's going to set it to 5 when the green flag is clicked. But then this is the second thing that we need to change down here. Every second goes by, we need the timer to decrease by 1. We need it to minus 1, right? Because this time we are counting down. So instead of plus 1, we need to go minus 1. So it should go from 5, a second go by, then it will change it minus 1. 5 minus 1 equals 4. 4 minus 1, 3. 3 minus 1, 2, and so on and so forth. All right, so let's see if this works. So let's test it out. Click on the green flag, and you should watch it starts with 5, and then you should see the number goes down. So let's see if it does that or not. 5, 4, 3. Perfect. It's doing exactly what we want to do. Wait a second. It is going down into negative numbers. We don't want negative numbers. We want it to stop at 0. Oh, that's not working. Something is not right. Well, look at the code. Of course it's going to count down to 0, go past 0, because we say forever and ever, keep doing this. So it's just going to keep, subtracting from the timer, whatever the existing time is. So it's going to go into negative, and we don't want it to go into negative. So how do we do that? Well, there's different ways of doing it. I'm going to show you 2 ways. See if you can figure out what that is. As we say in coding, there are many, many different ways to achieve the same thing. So I'll show you 2 different ways to do that. The first way is to think about it this way. We've got the timer, right? It's going to go down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And once it gets to 0, if the timer is 0, then stop, right? That's what we want to tell the computer to do. So what we need is a condition. We need the computer to check, is the timer equal 0 right now? It is? Okay, well then stop. Is the timer equal 0? Oh no, it's not. It's free right now. Well, then keep going. Keep doing your code, right? So what it will do is it will keep doing step 1, wait a second, step 2, change the timer by the -1. And it will keep doing all of this, like unless the timer is equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to give it a condition. And so we need an if and then block that it can be found under control. So we're going to do an if and then. And so we're going to put it inside the sandwich because what we wanted to do is to wait a second, change the timer, and then check, is it equal to 0 right now? Because if it is, then you better stop. So that is what we're going to put in here. So the condition is give the timer equals 0. Okay, so that is our condition. So let's do that. I'm going to go into our operators, which is where we can find like all the numbers, things that work with numbers. And what we want to do is we're going to say give the timer equals 0, because when the time's up, when there's no more time left, 0, then I want you to stop, right? So I'm going to put this, you can see the shape of the block is similar to the shape, the space right here. And that's one way for you to know, well, can I put this block inside? Yes, you can, because it's got similar shape. So I'm going to stick this in here. And then in here, I want to say give the timer equals to 0. So to find that timer variable, I have to go back to my variable section. And I'm going to drag this timer variable and I'm going to put it right in here. So I'm going to say give the timer equals 0, then stop. All right. So let's stop that. And then, so I can go back to my control. Okay. And you can see that if you scroll down a little bit, there is a block here called stop, right? So this is the one that we need. So I'm going to click on stop. I'm going to put it right inside our condition. And then I'm going to say stop this script, meaning stop whatever you're doing here, right? Because sometimes you might want something else to happen, maybe to the character, for example. So I don't want to stop everything. Sometimes you might want to stop everything so nothing happens anymore. But in this case, I'm just going to stop the script itself. So I've got to stopping the script, okay? And then so right now, what it's going to do is there's now 3 steps for the computer to do forever and ever. Step 1, wait a second. Step 2, change the timer by -1. Step 3, check, is the timer equal to 0? Yes, then stop, right? No, then keep going. And when you keep going, means then that going back to step 1, wait a second again, change the timer by -1, and then check again, is the timer equal to 0? No, it is not. Well, then keep going. Okay, so that's what the steps are telling the computer to do. Okay, so let's take a look. So we're going to click on the green flag again. It should start at 5 again. So it should go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And it stopped because the condition is true, right? The timer is now 0. Therefore, it's going to stop everything. All right, so that's one way to do a timer that count down and stop at 0. A different way to do it is instead of using the forever block, we're going to use a different block called repeat until. And that you can find also in control. And if you go down here, you'll see the repeat until block. So what is the difference? So let's take a look. I'm going to drag this over here so I can separate the 2 blocks. Okay, and what we need instead, this time we're going to use the repeat until sandwich, which means it's not going to do something forever and ever and ever, but it's going to do something and repeat all the steps that are inside the sandwich until something happens, until a condition is met. And in this case, we're saying that keep doing it until the timer equals 0, which is what we need, which is this one right here. So right click on the top block that I want to make a copy of and then click on duplicate. So now I have another set of blocks here. So this is the one I need, okay? And so what it is that I want to repeat until the timer equals 0. So if the timer is not 0, then keep doing what's inside the sandwich. And what I want to do inside is wait a second and change the timer. So I don't need this part anymore, so I can just remove that. And then what I want to put inside is wait a second and change the timer. So what it's going to do is it's going to start at 5, okay? And then it's going to follow the steps here, wait a second, and it's going to change to -1, which is 4. And then since the timer is equal to 4 right now, it is not equal to 0. It's going to wait a second again, and it's going to -1, change to 3, and then it's going to go back to keep doing it because the timer now is 3 and not 0, so it's not going to stop. But once it counts down to 0, time runs out, it's going to stop. Okay, so those are two different ways for you to do this code and make a timer that's count down to 0 and stop right there. Alright, so once it stopped the timer, so maybe you have a game over screen, right? So just to expand on this a little bit, you can see how we can use this timer. So now right now it's just going to, I'm just going to get rid of this here, and I'm going to use this set of repeat until. So at the end, when the timer equals 0, it is just going to stop. So let's see if that is true or not. So I'm going to click on play, and you can see it goes from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and stopped, right? It's over. Okay, perfect. So that works. And then now, once the timer reaches 0, I want to have a game over screen. Okay, and to do that, I am going to go to my stage and look at the costume that I have in my stage. So I'm just going to go into stage right here. So you can see when I click on the stage, I am now giving instructions and also looking at what's in the background. Okay, so which is where my stage is. And once I click on that, I'm going to go over to the top left corner here, and I'm going to click on the tab that say backdrop. So that is the costumes for my background. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see now I have two different backgrounds here. One of them is just a blank screen, which is what we see on our preview right now, and the other one is a game over screen. Okay, and I just use the text option here and just type in the words game over. Alright, so I have two different backgrounds, and so what I want to do is to tell the game when we first click the green flag, show me the white background, and then once the timer reaches 0, then show me the game over background. Alright, so you always want to make sure that what you want to do in the beginning of the game, you have to add some code to make sure that it is doing exactly what you want and showing what you need to show. So in this case, we needed to show the blank screen. So let's go back to our code here, and we're going to say when the green flag is clicked, so in the beginning of our game, so again go to events and then click on the green flag. I want you to, what it to look like? So I'm going to click on the looks, the purple blocks, and I'm going to say I want to switch the background to background number 1. And remember, if you don't remember which one is the right one, click on the backdrop tab again, and you can see this is backdrop 1 and backdrop 2. Now a better way, of course, to do this is if we want to update the name. So if you click on the costume, click on the word backdrop 1, and I can maybe say start, right? And then maybe backdrop 2 is game over. Okay, so if you change the name, the advantage of that is that it makes a lot more sense. It's like when we are talking about naming variables. We want to name it something that makes sense. So now if I go back to my code by clicking on the code tab right here, you can see now I can switch my backdrop to start or game over. And I know exactly, well, I won't mess it up because backdrop 1 and backdrop 2 doesn't make any sense to me. But start and game over, I know what that is. So I want, whenever the green flag is clicked, go to the backdrop start, which is the blank screen. So let's see if that happens. So I'm going to click on the stop sign and restart this, and you can see no matter what background we are in, we're always going to switch back to the starting point, which is the blank screen. Great, so now I have the background. Okay, so that's good. So it's starting in the same place. So let's go back to my owl, which is where the rest of the code is. So I'm going to click on the owl sprite down here, and you know that we're giving instruction right now to the owl because this is highlighted. You know, the stage is no longer highlighted with a blue outline, and you can also see here we have a little icon of the owl. So I know that I'm giving instruction to the right sprite. Alright, so now we've got the timer is equal to 0, and then what happened? Now I want you to change the background, right? Changing how something looks. So again, we're going to go into looks, so the purple block again, and this time I'm going to say one of the block is called switch backdrop to game over, right? You can see again, if this is not the right backdrop, you can click on the little drop down arrow here and you can change it to whichever one is the right one for you. So for me, it is the game over one. So I'm going to click on game over. And so now what we should see is that it's going to count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And once it reaches 0, this whole block is over. It's done with it. So it's going to move on to the next step, which is switching the background to game over. So let's see if that happens or not. So I'm going to click on the green flag. So watch this countdown here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and game over. You can see the game over screen comes up. So this is doing exactly what we want in the order that we want. Right? So this is how you can use a timer in Scratch. And you can see there's a lot more possibilities, right? Once we're here, maybe if you are doing a level, you might move the level up, right, to the next level, and then you might have a next level screen. Or if you want to give them a bonus points, right, you can say, when the if the timer is less than 60, right, so less than 60 seconds, if they complete the level, like within 60 seconds, then maybe they get bonus points, or something like that. Like, those are all the things that you can do once you have this variable. It is a great way to make your game more fun and add a little different dimension to it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. We will be back next week with more bite-sized coding time for you, and then we're going to explore a different coding concept in Scratch. And until then, happy coding, and we'll see you next week. Bye!